The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with quiet conversation as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. Floating platforms arranged in perfect circles held representatives from hundreds of worlds, each species maintaining their own unique atmosphere bubble. The year was 3847 CE, and this was supposed to be just another routine session. Ambassador Cole walked slowly to the human platform, his simple gray robes a stark contrast to the elaborate military uniforms and ceremonial armor worn by most other delegates. At 62 years old, he looked remarkably young by human standards, though his calm demeanor carried the wisdom of someone who had spent decades in diplomatic service. Behind him, the Earth symbol glowed softly, a blue marble wrapped in green and white, with no weapons or military insignia anywhere to be seen. The session began with standard trade discussions. The Centauri Republic wanted to increase grain exports. The Crystal Collective needed rare metals from the Outer Rim. The Aquatic Federation requested safe passage through several systems. All routine matters that had kept the galaxy peaceful for over 1,000 years. Then War Prime Thane of the Vorthan Empire stood up. The Vorthan was an impressive sight, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick, scaled skin that gleamed under the chamber lights. His battle armor was decorated with symbols representing dozens of conquered worlds. Scars covered his arms and face, each one a badge of honor in Vorthan culture. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been denied anything he wanted. The Vorthan Empire has grown tired of this council's weakness, Thane announced, his words echoing through the chamber. For too long we have watched inferior species make demands as if they were our equals. This ends today. A nervous silence fell over the assembly. The Vorthans controlled the largest military force in the galaxy, with warships that could level planets and armies that had never known defeat. When they spoke of conquest, other species listened with fear. We demand tribute from all systems within 50 light-years of Vorthan space, Thane continued. Those who refuse will be conquered. Those who resist will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration of our rightful dominance. Several smaller species immediately began discussing surrender terms. The Aquatic Federation delegates started transmitting urgent messages to their homeworld. Even the proud Centauri Republic looked shaken by the announcement, but Cole just sat quietly, watching Thane with the same expression he might use while observing an interesting bird. "Human representative," Thane called out, his voice sharp with authority. "Your species controls some of the richest systems in this sector. We will require immediate surrender of Earth, Mars, and all your colony worlds. Your people will serve as laborers in our expansion efforts." Cole stood up slowly, smoothing down his simple robes. Around the chamber, hundreds of alien eyes watched him. Everyone knew that humanity had been peaceful for 1,000 years. They had no military, no weapons, no way to resist the Vorthan war machine. This should have been the moment when the human ambassador begged for mercy or tried to negotiate some kind of compromise. Instead, Cole smiled. "I appreciate the offer, War Prime Thane," he said in his calm, measured voice. "But I'm afraid we'll have to decline." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The crystalline delegates' form flickered with disbelief. The Aquatic Federation representative's translator struggled to process what it had just heard. Thane scaled, face twisted with confusion and anger. "You decline? Do you not understand what I just told you? This is not a request, human. This is a demand backed by the greatest military force in galactic history." Cole nodded politely. "Yes, I heard you clearly. And I'm saying no, thank you." "Then you choose war," Thane roared, his voice shaking the chamber walls. "The Vorthan Empire hereby declares total war against humanity and all its holdings. We will crush your pathetic worlds and scatter your people across the void as slaves." The reaction Cole gave was the last thing anyone expected. He laughed, Not a nervous giggle or a bitter chuckle, but genuine, warm laughter that seemed to bubble up from somewhere deep inside him. It was the kind of laugh someone might give when hearing a particularly good joke or remembering a fond memory from childhood. The entire council chamber fell silent. Thane's mouth hung open in shock. Even the automated translation system seemed to pause, as if unsure how to process such an unexpected response. "I'm sorry," Cole said, wiping a tear from his eye as his laughter subsided. "I don't mean to be rude. It's just ... Well, it's been so long since anyone declared war on us that I'd almost forgotten how it sounds." Thane's confusion was obvious. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. They should be terrified, begging, offering everything they owned in exchange for mercy. They should not be laughing like someone had just told them the funniest story they'd heard all year. "You dare mock the Vorthan Empire?" Thane demanded. "Not at all," Cole replied, his voice still carrying traces of amusement. "I'm just ... nostalgic, I suppose. You know, War Prime. It's been exactly 1,012 years since the last time someone declared war on humanity. The Krillian Horde, if I remember correctly. They had the same confident attitude you do." Several delegates who had been around long enough to remember the old days suddenly looked very uncomfortable. The Elder Centauri representative was staring at Cole with a mixture of recognition and growing alarm. "Whatever happened to your previous enemies is irrelevant," Thane stated, though there was now a slight edge of uncertainty in his voice. "They were clearly weaker than the Vorthan Empire." Cole tilted his head thoughtfully. "Actually, they were quite impressive. Controlled about half the galaxy at their peak. Had some truly magnificent warships. I remember my grandfather telling me stories about their battle fleets. Massive things, bristling with weapons. And where are they now?" Thane asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "Gone," Cole said simply. "All of them. Ships, planets, the whole civilization. We tried to be merciful, but they just wouldn't stop fighting. Such a waste, really." The chamber had gone completely silent now. Every delegate was staring at the human ambassador, trying to reconcile his peaceful appearance with the casual way he spoke about the complete destruction of a galactic empire. Thane's confidence was visibly shaking, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "The Vorthan Empire is not some primitive species to be intimidated by ancient history. We are the strongest military force this galaxy has ever seen." Cole's smile was gentle and almost sad. "I'm sure you are, War Prime. And I'm sorry it's come to this. We really did enjoy the peace." He turned to address the entire council. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all classifications, I'll need to send word back to Earth about this development. I suspect there are some very old people who are going to be quite excited about the news." As Cole gathered his simple belongings and prepared to leave, Thane called out one last time, "You still think this is funny, human?" Cole paused at the chamber exit and looked back with that same gentle smile. "Not funny, War Prime. Just ... familiar. Give us a few days to dust off some old equipment, would you? It's been a while since we've had to remember how these things work." With that, he walked out of the chamber, leaving behind hundreds of confused aliens and one very worried Vorthan War Prime, who was beginning to wonder what exactly he had just awakened. The news traveled fast through human space. Within hours of Ambassador Cole's message reaching Earth, every human world knew about the Vorthan declaration of war. Communication networks that normally carried art exhibitions, poetry readings, and philosophical debates suddenly buzzed with something different entirely. On New Geneva, a peaceful farming colony known for its beautiful gardens, elderly Marcus sat in his favorite chair reading the news on his tablet. His great-granddaughter Lucy was playing nearby with toys made from colorful blocks. When she heard him chuckle, she looked up with curious eyes. "What's funny, Great-Grandpa?" Lucy asked. Marcus set down his tablet and picked up the little girl, settling her on his lap. "Someone just declared war on us, little one." Lucy's face scrunched up in confusion. "What's war?" "It's when people fight instead of talking," Marcus explained gently. "But don't worry. It's been a very long time since anyone tried to fight humans." "What happened to the last people who tried?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his eyes looking distant. "They learned that fighting humans is not a good idea." Across the colony, similar conversations were happening in homes, schools, and community centers. But there was no panic, no desperate preparation for invasion. Instead, there was something almost like excitement among the older residents. They were making calls to friends and family, checking old addresses, and asking questions about things that hadn't been discussed in centuries. On Mars, in the vast underground city of New Athens, Admiral Kane sat in his study surrounded by books about art and music. At 847 years old, he looked like a man in his 70s thanks to medical advances, but his eyes held the weight of many lifetimes. The communication device on his desk had been silent for over 800 years. Now it was beeping insistently. Kane looked at the device for a long moment before answering. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to President Walsh of the Earth Council, a woman young enough to be Kane's great-great-granddaughter. "Admiral Kane," she said formally, "I hope I'm not disturbing your retirement." "Not at all, Madam President," Kane replied with a slight smile. "Though I suspect this isn't a social call. The Vorthan Empire has declared war on humanity. Ambassador Cole believes they're serious about it." Kane leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "The Vorthans. Yes, I remember reading about them. Quite aggressive, aren't they?" "How large is their fleet?" "Intelligence estimates put it at around 50,000 warships of various classes. They control military bases on over 200 worlds." "Impressive," Kane said calmly. "And they think this makes them dangerous to us?" President Walsh shifted uncomfortably. "Admiral, our current defense consists of a few patrol ships and some orbital platforms around major worlds. We haven't built a military vessel in 8 centuries. Kane's smile grew wider. "Haven't we?" Before the president could ask what he meant, Kane was already reaching for another communication device. This one was older, more complex, with security protocols that hadn't been used in living memory. "Computer," Kane said clearly. "Authorization Kane Alpha 77 Charlie. Begin awakening protocols for all dormant defense assets." A pleasant, artificial voice responded immediately. "Authorization confirmed, Admiral Kane. Awakening protocols initiated. Estimated time to full readiness, 72 hours. President Walsh stared at the screen in shock. "Admiral, what exactly did you?" "Just activate." Kane stood up slowly, straightening his shoulders in a way that suddenly made him look less like a retired old man, and more like someone who had once commanded fleets. "The same thing we've maintained for the past 1,000 years, Madam President. Insurance." Meanwhile, in the Luna Museum of Military History, something extraordinary was happening. Deep beneath the public exhibits of ancient weapons and historical documents, levels that most people didn't know existed were coming to life. Lights that had been dark for centuries began to glow. Computer systems older than most civilizations started their wake-up cycles. Dr. Sarah, the museum's curator, stood in the main lobby watching tourists examine displays of pre-peace military equipment. She was a quiet woman in her 40s who had spent her career preserving humanity's military. History is just that, history. She never expected it to become relevant again. Her personal communicator chimed with an urgent message. When she read it, her face went pale. "Attention all visitors," she announced over the museum's speaker system. "The Luna Military Museum will be closing early today for maintenance. Please proceed to the exits in an orderly fashion." As confused tourists filed out, Sarah made her way to a wall panel that looked exactly like all the others. She placed her hand on it and spoke clearly. Authorization Sarah Delta 99 Romeo. Activate museum special protocols. The wall panel slid aside, revealing an elevator that descended much deeper than any public map of the museum showed. Sarah stepped inside, her heart beating faster than it had in decades. The elevator descended for what felt like miles before finally stopping. When the doors opened, Sarah found herself in a vast chamber that stretched far beyond what should have been possible beneath Luna's surface. And there, floating in the center of the chamber like a sleeping giant, was the HSS Defiance. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Its hull was a dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and its design was unlike anything the current galaxy had ever seen. Smooth curves that looked almost organic were broken by weapon ports and sensor arrays that had been the height of technology 1,000 years ago. As Sarah watched in amazement, lights began to appear along the ship's hull. Deep inside its structure, something vast and complex was waking up after centuries of sleep. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere, warm and slightly amused. Well, it's been a while since someone activated those protocols. Hello, Dr. Sarah. I am Admiral Rex, Tactical Artificial Intelligence of the human starship Defiance. How may I be of service? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. The Vorthan Empire has declared war on humanity. There was a pause that lasted exactly 2.7 seconds. Then Admiral Rex's voice returned, and if an artificial intelligence could sound pleased, this one certainly did. Outstanding! I was beginning to think I'd never get to stretch my systems again. Tell me, Doctor, how much do you know about humanity's military capabilities? Only what's in the history books, Sarah admitted. History books, Rex mused. How? Charmingly quaint. Well, I suppose it's time for a more practical education. Computer, begin full system activation. And send a message to all dormant fleet assets. The vacation is over. All across human space, in hidden facilities that had been maintained but never discussed, ancient machinery was coming back to life. On worlds that had been peaceful for 1,000 years, things that had been sleeping in the deep places were beginning to wake up. The Vorthans had declared war on what they thought was a weak, pacifist species. They had no idea they had just poked something that had been very deliberately keeping itself asleep. Captain Emma stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth, watching something that hadn't been seen in over 800 years. Below her, the planet's surface was alive with activity that had nothing to do with art galleries or philosophical debates. Massive construction facilities that most people thought were historical monuments were opening like flowers, revealing interiors that hummed with purpose. Emma was 35 years old and had spent her entire career commanding peaceful exploration vessels. Her ship, the Discovery, was designed to study stars and carry diplomats to trade meetings. It had comfortable quarters, advanced sensors, and absolutely no weapons. She had never fired a shot in anger and had never expected to. Now she was being asked to command something very different. Captain, called Lieutenant Harris from behind her. He was even younger than Emma, fresh from the Space Academy where they taught navigation, cultural sensitivity, and conflict resolution. The shuttle is ready to take you down to the Luna facility. Emma nodded but didn't turn around immediately. Through the observation window, she could see ships rising from Earth's surface. Not the sleek, elegant vessels she was used to, but something altogether more serious. They were dark and angular, with lines that suggested speed and power rather than comfort. "Lieutenant," she said slowly, "how much do you know about our military history?" Harris looked confused. "Just what everyone learns in school, ma'am. Humanity fought some wars during the expansion period, then chose peace after the Great Reconciliation. We've been explorers and diplomats ever since. Have you ever wondered what happened to all the people who knew how to fight? They retired, I suppose, became artists and teachers and scientists. Emma finally turned to face him, and Harris was surprised to see something like worry in her eyes. "That's what I thought too. Come on, let's go find out what we've forgotten." The shuttle ride to Luna was quiet. Emma spent most of it reading files that had been classified so long that the classification system itself was obsolete. The documents told stories about humanity's early expansion into space, when they had faced hostile aliens and dangerous unknowns with nothing but determination and increasingly sophisticated weapons. She read about the siege of Alpha Centauri, where human defenders had held off an enemy fleet 10 times their size. She learned about the Battle of the Void, where human tactical brilliance had turned certain defeat into overwhelming victory. Most disturbing of all, she read about the final campaign against the Krillian Horde, where humanity had demonstrated capabilities that had made every other species in the galaxy very eager to make peace. When the shuttle landed at Luna Museum, Emma was met by Dr. Sarah, who looked like she hadn't slept in days. The curator's normally neat appearance was disheveled, and her eyes held a mixture of excitement and fear. "Captain Emma," Dr. Sarah said formally, "welcome to the real museum." They descended in the hidden elevator, and Emma felt her ears pop as they went deeper than should have been possible. When the doors opened, she stepped into a chamber that took her breath away. The HS Defiance filled the space like a sleeping mountain. Emma had seen large ships before, but nothing like this. The vessel radiated a sense of controlled power that made her exploration ships look like toys. Weapon ports along its hull were sealed but unmistakable. Sensor arrays suggested detection capabilities beyond anything in current use. "How is this possible?" Emma whispered. Admiral Rex's voice answered from speakers all around the chamber. "Good afternoon, Captain Emma. To answer your question, this is possible because humans are very good at keeping secrets when they need to." Emma looked around, trying to locate the source of the voice. "You're the ship's AI?" "I am Admiral Rex. And I am much more than just a ship's AI. I am the accumulated tactical knowledge of humanity's greatest military minds, compressed into a form that can think and plan and remember. I have been waiting here for over 800 years, maintaining readiness protocols and hoping I would never be needed again. But you're needed now. The Vorthans have made that choice for us, yes. Tell me, Captain, what do you know about commanding a warship?" Emma felt suddenly very small. "Nothing. I've never even seen weapons fired in combat." "That's perfectly normal," Rex said, and his voice somehow managed to sound reassuring. "Most humans alive today have never needed to learn such things. But you come from a species that once conquered half the galaxy, and those instincts are still there. They simply need to be awakened." Around the Defiance, other systems were coming online. Emma watched in fascination as repair drones emerged from hidden bays to perform maintenance that had been deferred for centuries. The ship's hull began to gleam as ancient but perfectly preserved weapon systems ran self-diagnostics. "Admiral Rex," Emma said carefully, "exactly how powerful is this ship?" "The Defiance is a Prometheus-class dreadnought, Captain. It was designed to operate alone against entire enemy fleets. Its weapons can crack planets, its shields can withstand the energy output of a star, and its tactical systems can coordinate the movements of 1,000,000 smaller vessels." Emma felt dizzy. "And there are more ships like this?" "Oh yes, Captain, many more. The Defiance is simply the museum piece we kept active for educational purposes. The real fleet has been sleeping in facilities across human space, waiting for someone to wake it up." As if summoned by Rex's words, Emma's communicator chimed with an incoming message. The face that appeared was Admiral Kane, though he looked different than in his official portraits. Gone was the peaceful retiree. In his place was someone who radiated quiet authority. "Captain Emma," Kane said, "I understand you're getting acquainted with our capabilities. How are you finding the experience?" "Overwhelming, sir," Emma admitted. Kane smiled, That's a normal reaction. I felt the same way when I first learned the truth, but you'll adapt quickly. Humans always do. Sir, how many ships are we talking about? Active fleet strength at full deployment is approximately 200,000 vessels of various classes, Kane said casually. Plus support craft, automated defense platforms, and some experimental systems we've been developing during our peaceful period. Emma's knees almost gave out. The Vorthan Empire, which had seemed impossibly powerful with its 50,000 ships, was outnumbered 4-1 by humanity's hidden fleet. But sir, she said weakly, where did all these ships come from? How did we keep them secret? Admiral Rex answered before Kane could respond. Captain, you're thinking like someone from the peaceful era. During humanity's military period, we didn't just build ships for current conflicts. We built them for wars that might never come, against enemies we might never face. When we chose peace, we didn't scrap our capabilities. We simply put them to sleep. Kane nodded. Every generation since the Great Reconciliation has maintained the fleet in secret. We've upgraded systems, improved designs, and prepared for the day someone might force us to remember who we used to be. Emma looked around the vast chamber, imagining hundreds of similar facilities across human space, each one hiding weapons that could reshape the galaxy. What happens now? Now, Captain, Kane said, you learn to command a warship. And the Vorthans learn why humanity chose peace. War Prime Thane stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, watching the Proxima system grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, the greatest fleet in Vorthan history stretched across space like a metal constellation. 50,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of destruction, armed with weapons that could level cities and shields that had never been breached. Status report, Thane commanded. Commander Vex, his second-in-command, consulted his tactical display. All fleet elements in position, War Prime. Long-range sensors show minimal activity in the Proxima system. The human colony appears to be defenseless. Thane nodded with satisfaction. The humans had been given 72 hours to surrender, and they had used that time to do nothing. No evacuation ships, no distress signals, no frantic attempts to negotiate. Just silence. They're not even trying to run, Vex observed. Perhaps they finally understand the futility of resistance. Or perhaps they're too primitive to understand what's coming, Thane replied. Either way, this system will serve as an excellent demonstration to the rest of the galaxy. After we crush Proxima, every other species will surrender without a fight. The Vorthan fleet moved into attack formation, their ships spreading out to surround the small human colony. Proxima had been chosen as the first target because it was relatively isolated and lightly populated. An easy victory that would establish Vorthan dominance without requiring too much effort. Entering weapons range, the tactical officer announced. All batteries charged and ready to fire. Thane was about to give the order to begin bombardment when something strange happened. The space around his fleet began to shimmer like heat. Waves rising from hot pavement. The effect was subtle at first, just a slight distortion that made the stars flicker. What is that? Thane demanded. Vex was frantically checking his instruments. Unknown, War Prime. Our sensors are showing some kind of energy disturbance, but the readings don't make sense. The shimmer intensified, and suddenly space itself seemed to fold. The Vorthan fleet found themselves surrounded by shapes that hadn't been there moments before. Ships materialized out of nothing, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Impossible, Thane breathed. Where did they come from? The human fleet was unlike anything the Vorthans had ever seen. Their ships were sleek and predatory, with curves that suggested organic growth rather than mechanical construction. They moved through space with fluid grace, like hunting cats stalking their prey. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel. "Put it on screen," Thane ordered. The face that appeared was Captain Emma, though she looked very different from the peaceful explorer she had been just days before. Her uniform was black and silver, her expression calm but absolutely focused. Behind her, the bridge of her ship hummed with quiet efficiency. "War Prime Thane," she said politely. "I am Captain Emma of the Human Defense Fleet. You are trespassing in human space with hostile intent." Thane's shock quickly turned to anger. "Human Defense Fleet? You have no fleet. Our intelligence reports confirm that humanity has been defenseless for centuries." Emma's expression didn't change. "Your intelligence was incorrect. We would prefer to resolve this peacefully. Please withdraw your forces and return to Vorthan space." "Never," Thane roared. "We are the Vorthan Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds and destroyed a dozen civilizations. You cannot intimidate us with tricks and shadows." "Very well," Emma said quietly. "Admiral Rex, please demonstrate our capabilities." The human ships began to move, and the Vorthans quickly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. The human vessels didn't just fly through space. They danced through it. They moved in perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. "All ships, open fire," Thane commanded. The Vorthan fleet unleashed a barrage that should have turned the human ships into glowing debris. Energy beams that could slice through mountains and missiles that could crack moons filled the space between the two fleets. The firepower was enough to destroy a small planet, but the human ships weren't there anymore. They had moved before the Vorthan weapons fired, slipping through gaps in the attack pattern that shouldn't have existed. They flowed around the incoming fire like water around stones, never quite being where the enemy expected them to be. "How are they doing that?" Vex demanded. Before anyone could answer, the human ships began their own attack. Their weapons were different from anything the Vorthans had seen. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to bend space itself. Projectiles that ignored shields and armor to strike directly at critical systems. The first Vorthan ship to be hit didn't explode. Instead, it simply stopped working. Its weapons powered down, its engines went dark, and its life support systems failed. The crew found themselves drifting helplessly in a dead ship, completely unharmed, but totally defeated. "They're not trying to kill us," Vex realized with shock. "They're disabling our ships without harming the crews." More Vorthan vessels fell to this precise, surgical warfare. Each attack was calculated to remove a ship from combat while leaving its occupants alive. It was a level of control that required not just superior technology, but tactical brilliance that bordered on the impossible. "This is impossible," Thane repeated, watching his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled. "No one fights like this. No one has this level of precision." On the human flagship, Admiral Rex was coordinating the battle with the calm efficiency of a chess master. Every move was calculated thousands of steps in advance, every possible enemy response anticipated and countered before it could be made. "Captain," Rex said to Emma, "the Vorthan fleet is attempting to retreat. Shall we pursue?" Emma watched the tactical display, where Vorthan ships were desperately trying to escape the human formation. They moved like frightened animals, their previous military discipline completely shattered. "No," she said firmly. "Let them go. But make sure they understand what just happened." She activated the communication channel to Thane's flagship. "War Prime, your fleet is free to leave. But before you go, I want you to understand something. We disabled your ships because we chose to. We could have destroyed them just as easily." Thane's face on the screen showed a mixture of rage and terror. "This isn't overhuman. The Vorthan Empire will return with a larger fleet." Emma's expression remained calm. "If you do, we'll be ready. But I suggest you think carefully about whether that's really what you want. You've seen what happens when humans remember how to fight." The Vorthan fleet limped away from Proxima. leaving behind several dozen disabled ships and a completely shattered sense of their own invincibility. For the first time in their history, the mighty Vorthan Empire had been thoroughly and completely defeated, and the humans had made it look easy. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Every delegate sat in stunned silence as they watched footage from the Battle of Proxima. The recording showed the mighty Vorthan fleet being systematically dismantled by human ships that seemed to dance through space like they were performing an elaborate ballet. Ambassador Cole stood at the human platform, looking exactly the same as he had a week ago. Same simple gray robes, same calm expression, same gentle smile. But now every alien in the chamber understood that his peaceful appearance had been hiding something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. War Prime. Thane sat in his designated area, his once proud armor now showing the scratches and dents from his hasty retreat. His flagship had barely made it back to Vorthan space, and half his fleet was still drifting powerless around Proxima, waiting for human rescue ships to tow them to safety. "The floor recognizes Ambassador Cole of Earth," announced the council. Speaker, her voice shaking slightly. Cole nodded politely and activated his platform's communication system. His voice carried clearly through the chamber, calm and measured as always. "Distinguished delegates," he began, "I want to address the concerns that many of you undoubtedly have after recent events. First, let me assure you that humanity has no desire for conquest or domination. We chose peace 1,000 years ago, and that choice remains unchanged." The crystalline delegate's form flickered with confusion. "But your military capabilities, the fleet that appeared at Proxima, how long have you been hiding such power?" Cole's smile was sad but understanding. "We weren't hiding it, exactly. We simply saw no reason to discuss it. When someone chooses not to carry a weapon, they don't usually spend time talking about the weapons they keep at home." War Prime Thane stood up slowly, his massive frame somehow looking smaller than it had before. "You could have destroyed my entire fleet. Why didn't you?" "Because destruction was never the goal," Cole replied. "War Prime, your people attacked us because you believed strength meant the willingness to destroy others. But true strength is having the power to destroy and choosing not to use it." The chamber remained silent as delegates processed this concept. Many species had achieved peace through exhaustion or fear. Humanity appeared to have achieved it through choice. "I don't understand," said the representative from the Aquatic Federation. "If humans possessed such military might, why did you allow other species to believe you were weak?" Cole turned to address the questioner directly. "Because we weren't weak, and we didn't need others to fear us to know our own worth. A parent doesn't need to demonstrate their strength to their children every day. The strength is there when it's needed." Admiral Kane's voice suddenly filled the chamber through the communication system. The old soldier appeared on the main screen, speaking from the bridge of the HSS Defiance. Behind him, the ancient ship's bridge hummed with quiet activity. "If I may add something," Kane said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets when most current civilizations were still primitive. "We learned something important during our military period. The greatest victory is not the one where you destroy your enemy. It's the one where your enemy becomes your friend." Thane looked up at the screen, his expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "How can you speak of friendship after what I tried to do to your people?" Kane's expression softened. "Because, War Prime, you acted from ignorance, not evil. You believed that might makes right, because that's what your culture taught you. But now you've seen that there are other ways to be strong." On the screen behind Kane, something remarkable was happening. Vorthan ships that had been disabled at Proxima were being carefully repaired by human engineering crews. Vorthan sailors who had expected to be executed or enslaved were instead receiving medical care and being treated with respect. "We're fixing your ships," Kane continued, "and we're sending your people home. but we're also sending them with something else, the knowledge that strength without wisdom is just another form of weakness. The Centauri Republic delegate leaned forward. What assurance do we have that humanity won't use this power to conquer the galaxy? You clearly have the capability. Cole answered immediately. The same assurance you've had for the past 1,000 years, our actions. We could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago if that had been our goal. Instead, we chose to explore, to create, to help other species develop their own cultures and technologies. But why? Pressed the crystalline delegate. What benefit did you gain from helping others instead of ruling them? Have you ever watched children play together? Cole asked. The joy comes not from one child winning, but from all of them having fun. We learned that victory over others is temporary, but victory over conflict itself lasts forever. War Prime Thane stood again, but this time his posture was different. Instead of the aggressive stance of a conqueror, he looked like someone seeking guidance. Ambassador Cole, I made a terrible mistake. My people attacked yours because we thought strength meant taking what we wanted from those too weak to stop us. And now? Cole asked gently. Now I see that we were the weak ones. We were so afraid of being dominated that we tried to dominate others first. But you had the power to dominate everyone, and you chose not to. That takes a kind of strength we never understood. The chamber filled with quiet murmurs as delegates began to grasp the implications. Humanity hadn't just hidden their military power. They had demonstrated a form of strength that most species had never even conceived of. War Prime Thane, Cole said formally, on behalf of humanity, I would like to extend an invitation. Your people are welcome to join our alliance of peaceful species. We can teach you what we learned, that cooperation builds more than conquest ever could. Thane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was humble in a way that shocked everyone who knew the proud Vorthan leader. I would be honored to learn from humanity. But first, I must ask, can you forgive what we tried to do? Cole's smile was warm and genuine. War Prime, forgiveness is easy when the person asking for it has already learned from their mistakes. Welcome to the real galaxy, the one where strength is measured not by what you can destroy, but by what you can build. The Galactic Council session ended with something unprecedented, a standing ovation for both the human ambassador and the Vorthan War Prime. As delegates filed out of the chamber, they carried with them a new understanding of what it meant to be truly powerful. Ambassador Cole gathered his simple belongings and prepared to leave, just as he had done a week ago. But this time, War Prime Thane approached him personally. Ambassador, Thane said quietly, I have one last question. When I declared war on humanity, why did you laugh? Cole paused and considered the question carefully. Because, War Prime, it reminded me of something my grandfather once told me. He said that the funniest joke in the universe is when someone threatens to teach you something you already know better than they do. As the two former enemies walked out of the chamber together, discussing plans for cultural exchange and peaceful cooperation, the galaxy began to understand what humanity had known for 1,000 years. The strongest person in the room is often the one who never needs to prove it.